Iron Man was the spark for the MCU's vast cast of characters, but with the twisted tangle of cosmic timelines, did you know he never met some of the other heavy hitters? Keep watching to see the 5 heroes Iron Man never met in the MCU. Tony may have met Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, and possibly even Peggy Carter when he was younger. That's plausible. We saw Howard Stark and Hank working together in both Endgame and the first Ant-Man movie. Even though they had a falling out with Howard, it's nice that Hank and Janet attended Tony's funeral in Endgame. In Marvel Comics, Janet's Wasp and Tony's Iron Man were the co-founders of the original Avengers and even dated for a while. That's another story. The only Ant-Man character Tony Stark has met on screen is Scott Lang, first towards the end of Civil War and then later in Endgame. After Hope Van Dyne comes through the portals in Endgame, though, she doesn't really interact with Iron Man. It's a bummer they didn't get a chance to meet, especially since their parents were co-workers. Then again, Scott Lang said,
Hank Pym always said you never can trust a Stark.
Toward Tony in Captain America Civil War, leading Tony to reply,
Who are you?
If Hope grew up hearing that too, then maybe she wasn't interested in becoming pals. It's actually a plot point in Infinity War that Tony Stark doesn't know who Gamora is when he comes face to face with Peter Quill and the Guardian Squad. By the time Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange meet up with them in Infinity War, Gamora has already been kidnapped by Thanos. She dies on Vormir shortly thereafter. The new time-traveling 2014 version of Gamora doesn't really get to meet Tony in Endgame either. This is kind of a shame for the MCU, especially considering that Tony and Gamora absolutely hooked up in a comic too.
One thing I've proven is that you can count on me to pleasure myself.
Black Panther's sister Shuri had a really important role in Infinity War and got to be science bros with Bruce Banner, but Iron Man was in space at that time. It's possible that he hasn't met Okoye either, but since she represented Wakanda at Natasha's holographic Zoom meetings during the blip, it's pretty likely that the Dora Milaje leader has talked to Tony via hologram at the very least. Even though he retired to the woods with Pepper to raise Morgan in Endgame, he wasn't totally off the grid. Shuri was taken by Thanos' snap though, so we know she wasn't around. This does, however, raise an interesting question. Has Tony Stark ever been to Wakanda? He got close during the vibranium heist in Age of Ultron, but we have very little information on what he knew about the Secret Nation and its super science. If T'Challa and Steve Rogers were harboring Bucky Barnes in Wakanda in the aftermath of Civil War, then they probably weren't expecting Mr. Stark to visit anytime soon. It sure looks like he missed out on the world of Black Panther entirely. He never got to experience all that advanced technology or Shuri's delightful personality. It would have been a real treat for fans to listen to the two swap science stories. Perhaps she could have even shown him a more efficient way to make an Iron Man suit when he was back in that cave.
Sometimes you gotta run before you can walk.
Peter Parker says to Valkyrie when they meet in the final battle against Thanos,
Hey, nice to meet you! Oh my god!
Rocket Raccoon meets her in New Asgard when they go to get Thor in Endgame. She becomes good friends with the Hulk during Thor Ragnarok. But unless Tony took a trip to Norway we don't know about during the 5 years that passed in Endgame, Iron Man hasn't actually met Asgard's newest monarch. He also hasn't met Lady Sif, the only surviving member of Thor's pals either, nor has he crossed paths with Darcy Lewis or even future superhero Jane Foster for that matter. Almost all of the characters Iron Man hasn't met are women. Are you noticing that too? Thankfully, representation in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is changing and expanding with every new entry. Plus, it's probably not intentional that Tony didn't meet these women in the final battle. If you check out the deleted scenes from Endgame, there's a sequence in which Iron Man is seen being honored as he dies by Wasp, Valkyrie, and Okoye, among others, that didn't make it into the film. Gamora opts out, by the way. Hard to say it counts, but it's certainly something to think about.
Make a move, Reindeer Games.
How the heck did Iron Man never meet Groot? The sulking teenage tree is the second Guardians character who hasn't interacted with Tony Stark. In Infinity War, he was on a mission with Thor and Rocket to forge a new hammer when Tony met the other Guardians. Then, Groot joined the Wakanda fight with Thor and Rocket and got snapped away by Thanos. Tony returned to Earth in Endgame and met Rocket Raccoon, who worked with him on the time heist plan to retrieve the Infinity Stones. However, Groot didn't show back up until the portals opened at the end of the film, missing Tony completely. Imagine the jokes Iron Man would have made if he really stopped to take notice of a sentient sapling fighting beside him. At least we'll always have Cap formally introducing himself to Groot in Infinity War.
I am Groot!
I am Steve Rogers.
If you really want to nitpick, Tony also never met Howard the Duck, who shows up in the end credit sequence of Guardians of the Galaxy. But maybe that's for the best. We're pretty sure Tony's head would explode coming up with a whole bunch of nicknames for the talking duck. Even the most ambitious crossover event in history couldn't get to everyone. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about the MCU are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.